Hello everyone, thanks for joining me again. I would also welcome you to subscribe to this channel. Today I want to talk about transformative leadership by inclusive practices. And I'm, of course, Rohan Jowallah. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here. I've often said that my mission here is really to share content, information, and also to learn from others. But I want to start with a story. It's about a man I came to respect. As a matter of fact, I use him in my book as an example for inclusion. I might say and call him at this point, I'll call him John. While this is not his real name, he's a welder in Jamaica. He designed my grills back in Jamaica, and I was so proud of the work. On a particular day, I said to myself I would go downtown while he was working just to get a few things. I left him working there, and of course, you can trust him because he's a wonderful guy. So I decided while I was coming back up, I would get some Jamaican patties. So all I wanted to do that day, based on the sun heart and everything, I just wanted to relax on a mango tree, eat two patties, and then have a big Julie mango. I'm waiting for some at this point in time. Well, the good news is I arrived and John was still working as always. And I called him over and offered him the patties. And he said, I can't accept. And I said, oh, you're the first Jamaican man, to be honest, that I have seen don't eat patties. He said, well, to be honest, I eat patties, right? So I pressed him a bit and asked him why. He said to me, you see, if I accept this patty, I will not have any for the other workers, and that's not a good standing for me working with my friends. Whoa, that really got me thinking. Luckily, I had bought extra patties, so I was able to give him for his crew. This allowed me to think he was willing to give up what I was giving him, and he might have been hungry, but he was not willing to allow this to take place because the others would not have had patties too. But I was able to give him what he wanted. As a matter of fact, he had enough. I am saying to you at this point in time, John did not know possible what inclusion is, but he demonstrated it. He demonstrated it by making a personal sacrifice. I would say to you, it's not a one off for John, because a few months afterwards, he came back and did some work for me. And as a matter of fact, I was passing by his house when I stopped again. And I said to him, let's have a drink. Of course, you know, I'm going to be drinking orange juice, nothing else. So I was having my orange juice when he said to me, you know what? I can't accept your drink. I said, what do you mean you can't accept your drink? You're on a diet or something? He said, no, I can't accept the drink because the other guys are at the house. They're over there and I saw them, because I cannot be drinking and they are not. Here he goes again. His actions are inclusive. How many of us today would drink and eat and have fun while others are excluded, marginalized, discriminated against in our society? Hence, we are here today. And I want to focus on a few points in this short presentation. I want us to reflect on current status as it relates to you when it comes on to inclusion. I want to explore the concept of inclusivity in organizations. And I want to examine the promise or the promises and barriers to inclusive leadership. And I want to also provide a vision for inclusive leadership. However, before I go on, I want us to focus on one thing. Today, we find ourselves as educators in a moment of time that we must remember. If we do not see this moment as a time for transforming ourselves for humanity and to prepare those who are going to take our place, then what legacy will you have left? What you do at this time will shape your destiny. Therefore, if you have never considered the importance of inclusion, the time is now. As leaders, you must lead with the intention to leave a legacy. And I talk about legacy because it's important. If you do not have a memorable legacy, it means you have not been inclusive over your period of time. Therefore, I want to recommend that you think about transforming your leadership via inclusive practices. If we look at our own influence within our own context, we see that the inclusion part of it is very difficult. In Jamaica, if you're there, you look at uptown, downtown, and we see where we have some privileges for those who are living uptown. We also have considerations for those who are affluent in our society and the privileges that they're given at schools. For example, politician children versus pastors' children. We have public schools versus private schools, and the privileges are disposed within these contexts. We also have prejudice based on the university you attended. For example, some will say, I went to that university, so my university is much better than yours. So we have so many things going on in our society in Jamaica and globally that we can see that there's going to be a struggle to have equality. And another issue is that we have prejudice in our society based on those who are disabled or less fortunate. But let me go further, because I think it's important for me to articulate the ideological beliefs in our region. For example, religion. In Jamaica, we do have some religious issues that sometimes exclude others. We know how there are certain religions that practice their religion on a certain day. There's a big movement as it relates to gender orientation across the globe. How do we address this as a country? And you know where I'm going, but I'm not going to spell that out here. We know that when people come from certain levels or certain areas in Jamaica, they are discriminated against. And some of us here today, we make judgments, and I'm not excluding myself from that judgment. We understand in Jamaica, especially since I'm addressing many Jamaicans here, based on one generation having an affiliation with a political party that will exclude others. And sometimes because their party is not in power, they are also excluded. When one party is in power, they're included. When the other party is in power, they're excluded. Political affiliations can lead to exclusion or the possible harm of individuals in our society. And I think we have so much places to go as it relates in developing an inclusive society. And if we look forward and we move backward again, we can see that our historical connections are important. For example, we are presently connected to our histories. And I use that in plural because we have many experiences. In our history, many of our ancestors would have struggled to survive, while others we know would inform the Bakra master about the rebellions taking place, and this was be squashed, preventing that revolt from taking place. So therefore, they would be rewarded at the expense of others. So in our society today, those experiences are socially connected throughout history and are part of our innate being, I would say. So when we look at our society, we have to look at our social and cultural upbringings and how they influence us in our own moments, because we are at a moment that we need to change, and we must change. So our social and cultural upbringings, as I indicated, are also part of it. Our mission for individuality, I want for you to understand, for us to address our moment, the specific time, to become inclusive managers, we need to address, yes, our political ideologies, yes, our beliefs, yes, our historical connections, experiences, social upbringings, laws as it relates to government of our land, and international influences, and especially our own mission on earth. Yes, our own mission is going to be important. And why do I say these are general things that every manager should be aware of? Anyone here who is in management should be aware of. So it's just not applied to them, but everyone in this room. But when we look at the reality, the sad reality is that our system was never designed for inclusive practices. Yes, it was never designed for inclusive practices. And how you lead and culture a framework for inclusion is going to be up to you as managers. How do you make the changes required? Are you prepared to disrupt the status quo, or you're prepared not to because of the political ramifications of losing your job or being seen as being, one of these troublesome persons? Because inclusion is not something that sits comfortable in any society. The reality is no country has successfully constructed a school system that lives up to the ideals of inclusion. Inclusion has now become a buzzword, and that buzzword somewhat gets me disheartened because I know People are using it because it sounds sweet. I'm inclusive, I'm this and I'm that. Countries now have created inclusive policies, and there's a big gap between what is on the policy paper and, as a matter of fact, and what is practice. So we have some systems that need to be addressed. Our system in totality was never designed for equality and social justice. Hence, we have the problem. And to top this all off is a reality that inclusion, total inclusion, is not possible. What a problem we have as it relates to inclusion. But I'm not going to give up. I'm always in that fight because I have a dream. I have a dream that all education systems will have leaders that are committed towards personal development of all their employees. I have a dream when education leaders will consider the talent of each individual in their organization without giving preferential treatment to others. And my dream also is for education institutions to foster a sense of greater inclusivity that will become entrenched into the communities too. And my dream does not stop here, because I have a dream when teachers who have special needs will be given the support needed to ensure that they are accommodated within the schools that they work in. For example, if someone is disabled, they will have parking spots that is closer to the classroom more than anything else. And my dream continues because I have a dream that regardless of where students live or where students are in their status or life, they will no longer be classified based on their social background or personal identifications that are discriminating. I have a dream that political affiliation will not be part of the selection process for education leaders, but also they will be selected on their skills and their ability as educators. I have a dream where schools will no longer be a place that foster a culture of exclusion of others in our society, but enhance each other towards an inclusive society. I have a dream that individuals with certain ideological positions will not use these positions or ideas to exclude those in our society, but allow them to play a part regardless of their ideological position. I have a dream when inclusion will not reside on a piece of paper, but will reside in our actions and our daily activities. I have a dream for all leaders in our education system to see inclusion as a normal way of life for equality and social improvement. But within this dream, the reality is, again, it's a promise. It's a dream. However, without determination, it will continue to be a dream. We should not forget that school leaders must be advocates for their teachers if we are to reach a promised land. Recently, I was moved to see how teachers in Jamaica rallied around the recent unfortunate event of several members of their community. The reality is inclusion is supporting your fellow colleagues. However, so many students in Jamaica need extra support. I'm saying that we should all be champions for each other. Now, the promised land in this context is a promised land. It will require difficult conversations. However, we must understand that we must press on to be inclusive leaders and be prepared for the journey. The road to becoming an inclusive leader will need to consider leaders developing an awareness. They need to understand the importance of listening to voices, not just listening and but be in tune with the voices and acting upon that to ensure that there are some levels of respect and understanding as it relates to those voices. It's important to nurture and ensure that these talents are uplifted. They need to reflect on practices that they have that will exclude individuals and also ensure that they practice, as a matter of fact, reflective practice. They must become allies to the workers and advocate for them and create ways to address potential exclusion of employees. That's so important. And I want to talk about a few things before I wrap up, because I think as we look at it, we have to watch or talk. We have to understand that we must know when to talk things in private and public. We understand that we cannot bring societal discourses into the classroom that will cause disharmony. We understand that we have various privileges based on our powers, and we must administer this within a context. And I love to talk about media because you must understand how you're going to be using social media, your WhatsApp, your Facebook page, because you can say things that can cause problems. And remember, as leaders and anywhere in your society, you have some power, and you have to be careful how you leverage that power and your dominance. So watch your talk. The so will not be able to work. A long time ago, I learned this. Wherever you have scarce resources, you have conflict. And that was what I learned in Jamaica. And wherever you have the lack of transparency, you have conflict because some people think you're not being fair. You have competition because you have limited resource for that area. The lack of emotional intelligence creates conflict because you have no understanding. You do not know what it is to be human in your management style. And of course, conflict arises when you give preferential treatment to one person over the other. And the bottom line is conflict arises because of the lack of humanity. And in Jamaica, you must understand the context of what I'm talking about. And of course, within an inclusive culture, I want to wrap up now, we must have respect for each other, acceptance of each other's beliefs, developing a sense of belonging. If you want people to love your organization, you have to ensure that your culture has a sense of belonging. Within that sense of belonging, there must be respect. There must be equal opportunity within an inclusive culture. So as I close, I want us to reflect on a few questions. Are you honest and transparent in all your decision making as a leader? Do you consistently consider the views of all people you manage? Have you supported all persons you supervise in your department or school? Are you able to engage in difficult conversations or themes connected to inclusion? Are you providing a framework for the transformation of all students in your school as it relates to inclusion? And are you willing to advocate for others who are at risk of being excluded? I want to see that your moment is here. How you manage your moment will dictate your legacy. You cannot have a legacy without inclusion. As a matter of fact, I see the legacy as something that's important and can only be good. You want to be remembered as special. Thanks for listening.